oh boy, do I have some special guests for you. And if you're doing business in the state of Washington, you are not going to want to miss this. I promise. I got two major firecrackers coming to you live from Washington, a mother and daughter duo, Kelly and Hailey Allen. I had them on when their story is amazing, but what's even crazier is all the shit that's going down in Washington.
Yes.
It'll blow your mind. So please, let's give a warm Insurance Roots welcome to Kaylee and Hailey Allen from the Allen Group out in Washington State. Hey, ladies!
Hey, Rebecca! How are you today?
I am amazing. I am 48 hours away from boarding a plane, or maybe less than that now, to go to Hawaii for a month. So I am amazing. I'm packing and just doing all the things.
Well, that's a well-deserved month that you have coming, for sure. And you're right. We have a lot of crazy stuff happening in Washington. As you know, we're not part of the federal marketplace. We're in our own little bubble out here in Washington with our own legislation. And Hailey and I have been very involved. We work closely with NAFA and going to legislative sessions and really trying to stay on top of how things will impact our industry. And it's been a really fun experience for us, fun and hair pulling at the same time.
Very much hair pulling.
Well, I think anything with the government is hair pulling. And right now, the state of insurance as a whole is definitely hair pulling. Now, you said you were just at the legislation meeting or conference or something in Washington. I know you just had that like last week or something. What is hot off the
in
press?
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, the other Washington. So we were there talking about that big, beautiful tax bill that's been all over the news. But then we also spoke a little bit on the expiring advanced premium tax credit. So that was another big topic that we were trying to tackle with both NAFA and NABIB has touched on that. NABIB had their conference in Washington, D.C. back in February. So two really great organizations that I would encourage every agent to be a part of because they are just movers and shakers when it comes to the advocacy side of the industry.
But it's expensive to be part of those, right? And so what's great is we do join. We think it's very important. It's a huge time commitment. And we understand that a lot of agents don't have that time to give because you've got your hats on and you're working hard in your office. So we like to provide the information to individuals, let them know what's coming up, when to reach out. We had a big B&O issue this year where we've been able to historically avoid the B&O taxes on our industry, but with our great governor and the wonderful individuals that want to bring more revenue to the state of Washington, our industry will be impacted with an increase in the B&O taxes. So that's unfortunate.
So what is B&O?
Business and occupation
so what is the B&O?
tax. Yeah, it's the business and occupation tax. You don't have that in Texas?
Explain that. No, so explain that.
Okay, so if you have a business in the state of Washington, you have the great fortune of paying additional taxes on your business, and it's all revenue based. It's not based on your net income. It's based on your total revenue. Historically, in the state of Washington, as insurance agents, our lobbyists have been really able to advocate against the B&O hitting us at a very large amount. We've been able to have it very significantly reduced because the understanding is we don't have control in our revenue. It's all commission based. We're subject to commission cuts. And so it's not, we just have so many more confines on how we bring in revenue. And as a result, it's been able to be a very minimal amount. But this year it's going up to, I believe, almost 0.5% of your revenue. So although that may not seem like a lot, it does add up. And you know, when you're a lot of agents work from home, they're just every little bit dips into your income, your bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 5%, depending on how much money you make, that could be substantial.
I believe it's 0.5. Sorry, 0.5%. And that will take
Well,
effect.
that's a little better.
Yeah.
But none of us want to give up any more than we already have because our commissions are going right. They're pulling plans off the market. And we're just scrambling here with our clients and everything else, just trying to keep our heads above water right now. What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff that's going on? And what do you see
Oh,
different in Washington than you do see in the other states?
oh gosh, I think that we saw, I don't know how much disruption because we've been very focused on Washington State. So I can't speak to the other states on their level of disruption other than what I've heard from other agents. But in Washington, we lost 11 carriers this year in one aspect or more of the industry. And that was really tumultuous wow, I cannot talk, tumultuous for our clients, especially here in our area. We serve a lot of the North Central Washington area. We serve the entire state. But in North Central Washington, we lost two major heavy hitters that made up a little bit more than 85% of the market share on the Medicare Advantage side, which really impacted a lot of our clients when those carriers left. So yeah.
Well, and what else happened is we had a lot of individuals, as I'm sure you did in Texas, that took advantage of the guaranteed. Oh, we're a guaranteed issue state.
Yeah.
And so that's unique to Washington. So when the Medicare Advantage plans left, that gave a guaranteed issue for individuals to jump into other plans, which we know generally happens with the Medicare Advantage period, disenrollment period. But in Washington State this year in legislation, they were really wanting to make a change so that year round an individual would have guaranteed issue opportunity. And so that resulted in some supplement carriers such as Medico leaving our state, and they stopped paying commissions. Actually, they didn't leave, but they stopped paying commissions effective February. And because of all the enrollments into Medico, their rates are anticipated going up 18% in September. So that's a huge impact on our client base.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was so House Bill 1603 actually was the one that it didn't pass due to, in part, lobbying efforts on the carrier side, but also lobbying efforts because of NAFA and NABIB. This is one that I actually testified on in Congress, and the bill was going to require a guaranteed issue of a Medicare supplement plan anytime a client voluntarily disenrolled from a Medicare Advantage. Nationwide, of course, we've got that guaranteed issue if the carrier leaves or the plan leaves their service, or the client leaves the plan service area. But in Washington State, they were just going to say, oh, you can make a change at any point as long as you have a valid enrollment period. And that was going to significantly impact the ability of carriers to keep their rates at a reasonable level. So several carriers came out and said, hey, if this passes, we will leave. And thankfully, it did not pass.
Yeah. We had other interesting bills this year. One, I think most people would agree was great, and that's bringing financial literacy into classrooms. And as an industry, we were definitely supporting it. We were trying to get NAFA involved, and reaching out and saying, we can find insurance agents to be docents even. Like, this is right up our alley. And we were really surprised by some of the pushback by those who are elected and not wanting to bring financial literacy into the curriculum because it would take more time for teachers. Mm-hmm. Did you want to elaborate a bit on that? Hailey actually testified on this one. I did testify
on that one as well. And on that one, it was the pushback that we got, it was not actually from the party in power, which I was a little bit shocked about. In Washington State, we very much have one party rule. And it was a lot of the conservative women who were pushing back and saying, well, if our students aren't passing basic math classes, why would we teach them financial literacy? And so going back to those individuals and saying, well, maybe they're not passing basic math because they don't understand why math is important. And if we make math important through financial literacy and through understanding numbers and balancing your checkbook and everything, it'll make it interesting for those students. And so we were able to see a lot of bipartisanship there, which was really unique to see in Washington State.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you guys have that guaranteed enrollment window, which is wild to me. But then you're also one of the states with the birthday rule. I mean, is MedSup just getting hammered out there, or are they wanting people to go to MedSup, or are they trying to keep people on a Medicare Advantage plan? What are you seeing there in the state itself? Like, are people leaning one way more than the other, or are they just a frenzy, a free for all?
I think it depends on where in the state you're located. We don't actually have a birthday rule. So for us, Medicare supplement plans, you can change, with exceptions of a couple of them, you can change from any Medicare supplement plan to any other supplement plan, and you can change every month if you wanted to. We discourage our clients to do that because, you know, that causes a lot of headache for them, headache for the carriers, and headache for the providers as well on who are they supposed to be billing. But as far as Medicare Advantage versus Medicare supplement plans, the Medicare Advantage over on the other side of the mountains, which would be like the Seattle area, they're very strong. They have robust, strong benefit packages and plans and networks. Here where we're located in North Central Washington, and even as you move further east into the state, you find that the networks aren't as robust. Or we had one, I'm not going to name any names here, but here locally, we had one provider mid-year in February decide to drop one of the Medicare Advantage carriers that came into our area. So they dropped mid-season. Kelly and I have been working really closely with both the carrier and the provider to try and facilitate a arrangement to get that contract back. But as of right now, in about a week, we have a lot of clients who are not going to have their provider in network anymore unless that contract comes to fruition. So working really, really hard on that. We were able to make some changes because thankfully the notification came out during the MAOEP period. So we reached out to all of our clients that went onto that plan, discussed their options with them, and the majority of them decided to stay on that carrier despite not knowing if their provider would be in network come June. And they decided to make that stay where they were because in most cases their medications, it was a $1,300 to $1,500 difference in medication cost for the year. So really trying to bring that to light and build those relationships with the providers.
Well, that was just fascinating, quite frankly. You know, so I'm going to speak to the carrier. The carrier was Humana, and
she's just gonna throw it out there. We're all agents here. It's okay. We're all agents here.
But what I liked about it is we became that advocate not only for our, I mean, primarily for our customers, and how it all started originally. You know, like in December, we're told that they're in contract, and then our clients are, you know, they're getting their cards, they're switching their information at one of the providers, and the providers are telling them, we're not taking Humana. And so the frenzy that we had with our clients are like, you just enrolled me in something and they're saying it's not being taken. And so being able to have that relationship with Humana, I also have a relationship with the CFO and the CEO of that provider organization. And I'm like, hey, Manuel, I'm being told that you guys don't have a contract. And so, you know, just having those relationships is so important. Manuel was able to determine that indeed they did have a contract, but only because our Humana rep finally gave me a copy of the contract that I then provided to the CFO. I'm like, look, you have a contract. And so, and in the meantime, I, at the federal level, because as you know, Medicare is federal. So I have a relationship with Representative Kim Schreier. So I'm reaching out to her. She's got a background in medical and is very much a patient advocate. So being able to contact her and her aide directly, say, I need help. Basically, our clients are being denied access to care. And although we're chuckling, we realize it wasn't I mean, it's not a funny situation, but
No.
it's also mind blowing. Like, how does this happen?
Where's that lack of communication?
Yeah. And so finally it was February when the CFO agreed that, they looked into it. They do have terms, they have this contract, but what is going to happen? Now we're going to terminate it on June 15th.
Like 14th.
Oh, June 14th. June 14th.
Because they did this, they released it, the day of love, February 14th, Valentine's Day. They decided, we love our community so much, we're going to drop this contract.
It's like, and who can do that? So it has been, and again, as Hailey mentioned, I think rural communities have some bigger issues. There are fewer providers, fewer carriers, so they have unique situations, unlike what we see in the Spokane and Seattle area. But also what we found fascinating is just south of Seattle, there are several, like within an hour and a half of Seattle, there are rural communities that are fighting the same fight. They're having the same struggles. And so I think the bigger concern is, how do you get that access to care for the rural communities, whether it's a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan? And also, as you know, in where you are, and we see it around the country, sometimes the Medicare Advantage plans are economically, they are the best choice for an individual based on their finances. So do you want to talk about what happened December 7th in our office?
What happened?
We had a guy come in.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So it's a Saturday, we're working, and we have made it in our office. We actually don't take appointments on December 7th. We use December 7th as that cleanup, wrap up, make sure everything is tidy. And you're always going to have those last minute people that call and say, oh my gosh. So if we're booked and we're full on December 7th, there's no way we can help those procrastinators. And we all know I'm a procrastinator. So I mean, my accountant probably doesn't like me very much because I send it off to her the last week. But
I'm the same way. Don't feel bad.
yeah, so we as a practice don't actually we will get people in, but we get all of our appointments. If anybody calls us before the last day of November, they're in before, even on the last day of November, we're like, all right, fine. If we can get that scope, as a walk-in, because we have a retail location, they can walk in and they just dropped in. Okay, let's get our scope and let's have the conversation. But with that last week of December, it's just cleanup, getting people in, getting more of those last minute individuals.
But we did have a client. We both
Sorry.
had clients, and because they were procrastinators, and we're in the middle of meetings.
Yep.
And lo and behold, some man comes walking in, and he hangs out in our office for a bit. Hailey's polite and goes out and says, I'm in a meeting. Do you want to come back? Because it could have been somebody who needed care right away, and gave an estimate of when we'd be available. And all of a sudden, he just asked if we offer Medicare Advantage plans, to which we, of course, said yes. And then he unloaded on how immoral it is, how unethical, how we're doing a huge disservice by offering them. And of course, this is right after the United Healthcare executive had been sadly executed. And so his perspective was that we were misleading individuals into plans that were not appropriate. And he'd never worked with us before. So it was a real eye-opener for us in that there's so much miscommunication on plans as a whole, and how everybody has a different need. And also security.
We back.
We might need a little security. But no, so to your question on what are we seeing with regard to Medicare supplements and Medicare Advantage plans, it's really region specific and also driven by the providers a lot, as our experience with that one.
For sure.
Hospital.
For sure. It's interesting about that guy because I see it day in and day out with the business, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's in the office, whether, it's doing a retail event for a carrier or doing Medicare 101s. the misconception of advantage versus supplement is huge. And people will walk in and be like, I need to talk about Medicare, but I don't want any of the advantage BS. And you're like, okay, no problem. But legally, I got to tell you about both, right? Do a nice little T chart. I tell you about both. Legally, I got to. And even when they tell me, I don't want, I'm like, I understand that, sir or ma'am, but legally, I have to tell you about both. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job and I could get in trouble. They're like, oh, okay. And I kid you not, 8 out of 10 times, once they truly hear how it works, they end up going advantage, even though they didn't want any of that, but they didn't understand how it works. Or they've had an agent not do their due diligence on their doctors, on their medications, and make sure the plan does cover everything they need, and truly explain it. There is so much miscommunication. I don't think there's any right or wrong plan for any specific client. But what there is a whole lot of people not getting the facts told to them and how these things actually work, so they can choose what's going to fit their lifestyle, their needs, their budget, and then ultimately long term. Because I always try to explain to people, this sounds good today, but is it going to sound good in 5 years? I don't want you just to pick a plan out that sounds good today. I want you to pick the plan out that's going to sound good when you're, in the hospital fighting for your life, because that's when it's going to matter. And make them really stop and think about the future. And I think when agents do that, people are properly informed and you don't have this big issue. Well, this is bad or that is bad. I mean, we've never had an issue in the office where we couldn't resolve it. I think at the end of the day, we are here for our clients every step of the way, just like I know you are. So when they get into a situation, and I've seen MedSup get into situations too, believe me, when they get in a situation, they call us, we will do everything on our power to make it straight, get it right, whatever we need to do. And I know you guys are huge like that in your own community. And as I recall, you do the Medicare, you do ACA, you do PNC, for Pete's sake. I mean, and you're a 2-man group. How did you even do all that?
Right? Well, we care. Yeah. We care. And what's lovely is that when you're leading with heart, I think people see that and that you're just attracting individuals. But we have expanded, Rebecca. So we've got a couple new agents, which is exciting. And we now have office staff, which is great. And here's the big thing. We walked away from the property and casualty market. So that was huge for us. In Washington State, it is becoming harder and harder due to wildfire. And so we decided, we got into this, in the health market, and to be advocates for individuals. When ACA came around, there was just huge disruption. And so we went and decided to go back to our roots, get rid of that PNC. Let's stay here in the health and the Medicare. This is where people are really confused and we want to help them. We try to take fear out of the equation. And I think that's what you do as well. And that's where the educational component is, because we have so many people, like you were saying, who will avoid a Medicare Advantage because they've heard bad things, or they feel like they're somehow going to end up paying so much more. And sometimes when you just look at the cost, like what you would pay on a monthly basis for a supplement versus what that out-of-pocket maximum in a worst-case scenario on a Medicare Advantage is, there really may not be that significant of a difference depending on the plan. So education is key, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely.
And when you're doing what you do because you've got that heart of service, then it all seems to work out.
Well, and Mom, you got into the industry for service.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So my husband and I, Doug, we have a construction company. Thankfully, he's starting to weed that one down. He's a little bit older and looking forward to retirement. But we had our own health insurance plan at the time ACA came out, and suddenly what we were paying was it looked like a bargain compared to what ACA was bringing up. And I started talking to people in my community. People were having to refinance their homes to pay for their health insurance. Because at the time, if you recall, there was a penalty if you did not have the Affordable Care Act insurance. And so, and individuals were having to choosing, they wanted to send their children to college, but to afford the insurance and college was cost prohibitive. I had clients. Well, so at the time in the conversation, I just said I can help. And so I got involved for advocacy and to find out what was going on. And as my business grew, literally having clients in your office that are having to choose between putting food on the table or buying insurance, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. So I was really pleased when that penalty went away, but I think we're in for some hard times coming up ahead. As we're losing these premium tax credits, we're either going to see individuals that are going to choose not to be insured, or they're going to go back to, how do I make it happen? How do I afford this?
Yeah.
And that's a tough conversation for people to have. Those are the kitchen table conversations that individuals don't want to have.
Yeah. And
Well,
the
and what
people who
makes it such
choose,
a tough conversation is because the people who ultimately really need the health insurance, that really rely on it because they have health consequences they're going through. And if so, somebody's a diabetic and has to have their medication, or somebody's a seizure patient, or somebody's cancer and they need their, their Revlimate or their cancer injections, and then that's the person who can't afford it. That's practically a crime on humanity, right? If they can't afford it, if their premium goes from, let's say, $100 a month to $1,000 a month, and they can't afford it, and they're going through a health crisis like that, what are people supposed to do? They can't get on anything else because everything else is underwriting. And then they can't afford this. Well, Medicaid is now up in the air too. And in our state, we don't even have expanded Medicaid. I mean, it really makes me concerned what we're going to see and do in the future and how we're going to help these people. Have you figured out your game plan yet on what you guys are looking at to still try to help these people? How are you going to make that happen?
So, and in Washington, we'll get to that answer, but in Washington, we do have a state funded Medicaid portion, the expanded Medicaid. And so that is going to have big impacts as well. So the double whammy on the premium tax credit plus the Medicaid reduction, we're going to see a lot of individuals that are suffering. Even before though, how do you feel about those Christian ministry programs?
Have I sold one? Yes, we are contracted with one of them. I've only probably written 10 people on it though in my entire career, but I will say 8 of those 10 people are still on it. I
Yes.
think that's, not much different than a hospital indemnity plan in a lot of ways. They have their purpose, but you better make sure you ultimately explain it to death so they truly understand how it works. And I'm even to the phrase of even having them sign something that states, you talked about this, you talked about this, you talked about this, because we all know as insurance professionals, they are not backed by the insurance industry. They can do what they want. But at the same time, some people, that's like their only choice.
Well, I'm quite fearful that that's where we're going to see a tremendous amount of the healthy individuals that just want to have something, but don't want to be, as Hailey alludes to often, in the bend over and take it methodology, right? So I think we're going to see a rise in enrollments there. And so to your point, having our due diligence done so that we can make sure that we're clearly communicating what is covered, what's not covered, where are the gaps in that, and what are the potential risks. And then those hospital indemnity plans, I believe, are going to become more important as far as the financial planning. With regard to the individuals with severe health conditions, that's a big worry. Yeah. That's a big concern. I don't know what to do. I don't have it. Well, that's the hard part, is that we are not always going to have the perfect solution for individuals.
Yeah, there's a pivot for healthy people, but there's not really a pivot for the unhealthy.
I'm sorry, what?
There is a pivot for our healthy individuals, but there's not a real pivot for our unhealthy individuals.
There's not.
And that's the scariest part about the whole thing, because they need it the most and they don't have a second option. Yeah. What were you saying, Hailey?
So One of my bigger concerns is not necessarily what happens this year. We're going to see a lot of shakeout. We're going to see people, the healthy individuals who can afford to leave the market, say, you know what, we're not going to be part of this market, either go to an underwritten plan. They might be able to hop onto a different employer sponsored plan, or if they're their own small business, do a small group of one or two. Or those individuals will go to the Christian ministries programs. I'm less worried about them than the really unhealthy people. And I'm worried more for the unhealthy people the following year. Because now, when we've seen all of these individuals leave the market, what's skewing the loss ratio now for the carrier, and the carriers are going to have to increase those rates. And so they're going to continue to have higher and higher rates over time.
Like a vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are some,
I mean, that's a trap we got in from COVID.
right? Which is what's going to cause the problem right here. Yeah. And for the individuals, or for the healthy individuals, it seems like it's even more important to be talking about like the life insurance products that have the living benefits, because when you're healthy, you generally get a better rating, of course, but to know that you can utilize those living benefits should you end up getting diagnosed with certain things like perhaps cancer. So that those might be an option, but again, not for an individual that has to be underwritten. Maybe there's an opportunity.
You also have, for people who maybe are severe diabetic or something like that, you could bundle like a cancer plan, you could do a heart attack and stroke, you could do these other things. So if something like that were to happen, at least they would have like a cash benefit, right? But that doesn't cover their day-to-day needs. And generally people who are in this category, in this bucket, it's the day-to-day needs that they're actually the most concerned about. Because let's be honest, if you're having a heart attack and you go to the ER via ambulance, they have to take you. Like, they're not going to turn you away. But your doctor's office may turn you away because you can't pay, the upfront money to get in the door, or the urgent care turn you away because you can't pay the $100 fee to get in the door, right? Those day-to-day needs are what they're really going to suffer, picking up their medications. I can't afford $1,000 for Eliquis on my own. How am I supposed to do that? And that's where the industry, I think, is really going to hurt, is on those day-to-day needs.
We echo your concerns. I think all of us, right? That's something that we're all keenly aware of. And again, it's where that we don't have that solution. That makes it really hard.
So if you're an insurance agent and you want to advocate for your clients and you want to be a part of the movement to try to make things better, what is some advice you'd give to somebody that's maybe never stepped foot in the political side of this, to help fight the good fight, to hear our voices, to hear our clients' voices on what's really going on? How would they do that?
I would say join an organization that is already doing that. You're going to learn, you're going to build referral partners. I would not be the agent I am today. Kelly can probably say the same thing if it weren't for NAIFA, which I know we've thrown that around a little bit. That's the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, if anyone's not familiar with that. So NAIFA Washington is the chapter we're part of, but there's a chapter in every state. And I'll just say the only state that didn't show up to the fly-in was Oregon. So we got to get some more membership in Oregon there so they can make it to DC next year. But every state in the nation has a chapter. Get involved, be part of NAIFA, join NABIB, which is the National Association of Benefit Insurance Professionals. They were formerly NAHU, National Association of Health Underwriters. So they've changed their acronym a little, but they're also very, very strong in the advocacy arm. And both Kelly and I are members of NABIB as well. And then the third organization with our lovely Renelle is HAFA, Health Agents for America. And Renelle is a mover and shaker and really getting some things through and helping to really educate people. You don't necessarily have to join all three of the organizations, but pick one, get involved.
Mhm.
NAFA and NABIB do have higher dues than HAFA does. So, if you're looking to get involved and you're not at the place where you can spend the higher dues, maybe get involved, get connected with Renelle, because she's also working with NABIB and NAFA. I don't know on NABIB, but I know NAFA, if you're a newer agent in the industry, they have a tiered monthly dues amount instead of having the full amount as an annual. But get involved.
Well, the other thing with, I'm not sure about HAFA, but with NABIB and NAHU is they have so many professional development courses available.
Mm-hmm.
And as Hailey was saying, when you surround yourself with people that are intending to have best business practices, it only makes you a better agent, and it allows you to continue your education. Not everything has got CE attached to it, but you're surrounding yourself with individuals that are really about not only bettering their practice, but bettering themselves and doing it all for that service heart, which is fantastic. And as Hailey was saying, that's really made us better in what we do.
Yeah. And we knew going into last season which carriers weren't going to be there, starting at about like May, June timeframe, where we were bringing it to our upline at the time. And we were bringing that out and saying, hey, this is happening. And they're like, no, it's not. Oh, yeah, now it is happening. And so for us, we were really able to have the insight, build the relationships with the carriers, and get to the place where we are the experts and we know what's going on, and we're having the conversations at that higher level because it matters. And further to that, NAFA and the relationships I've built within NAFA, now if there's something that's going on that's just funky, I have a resource where I can call 20 to 40 different people at any time and say, hey, here's a situation. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? Because even though I've been in the industry now 8 years, Kelly's been in 11. 11, 2014.
I feel like I was 20 years.
Feels like 20.
Yeah, you didn't get until DC.
Oh, that's right.
But at this point, there's still things that we encounter every day that we've never encountered before. And I'm sure you feel that too, Rebecca. I'm sure things cross your desk that you're like, whoa, what is this? And having those referral partners, or not even referral partners, just fellow agents to be able to rely on and say, hey, what is this?
I'm a huge HAFA fan, big NABIB fan. NAFIF, I'm gonna have to look more into. I'm not that familiar with them, but I'll tell you this: I've gotten to know Renelle really well through HAFA, and have gone to DC and met with senators with her, and that's been an amazing experience. If that's something you want to do, I highly suggest you do that. But as you talk about, having somebody to talk to or whatever, I'm forever sending Renelle messages with WTF. Look at this shit that just happened, right? I sent a recording link just a couple of days ago to her and CMS, and I was like, you're not going to believe this shit. And this was strictly a recording of a 3 call with the marketplace. I'm like, this is, and they're just like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So, we've got to have those alignments. We've got to have those relationships. We got to raise our hand. We got to get involved, or potential to have an industry we're not going to recognize in a couple of years. And as much as it hurts us in our business, it's going to hurt the clients even more. And so we've got to be proactive and really, raise our hands and get involved.
And what we have to do is we have to tell the stories. It's not about the hypotheticals. We have to go in and we have to say, here's my client and here's what they're going through. And even get to the point where, if we can, get some of these people to get in front of the elected so they can tell their story. So for everybody who's listening, if you have a client who's been significantly impacted by change, try to get that story, and we can help you share it with your elected. Even though we're in Washington State, we're very connected around the country, and we know how to connect you. So the more they hear the more it ties on their hearts. We're not just numbers when they see an actual person who's going through huge pain, huge loss. It matters, really matters.
And speaking of that, if somebody wants to get a hold of you ladies, and whether it's in the state or maybe they want to tag along on a trip to DC with Hailey, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can give us a call, 509-888-9038. You can also reach out to us through our website, kellyallenagency.com. Our emails are pretty simple, kelly@kellyallenagency.com and Hailey
at kellyallenagency.com. Although we are going through rebranding right now, so those will still work. They're going to become alias emails, but we'll have more contact information out here shortly. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn, Kelly Allen Agency, Kelly Allen, Hailey Allen, or find me on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Also,
or Hailey, I know if you just go to a good insurance conference, you're probably likely to bump into her.
Yeah,
she's like a lot like the rest of us. She likes to go play with other agents, and get involved that way.
Yeah,
she's
like a conference junkie.
It's fun. We have a group of girls that get ready together. It's great.
It is an awesome industry. And to be supported by a bunch of people that are going through the same stuff. I don't know about you, but like my husband doesn't really understand what we do. So I come home and I'm talking about stuff and he's rolling his eyes. So it's a nice community.
My husband's IT. He doesn't understand anything outside of a computer. So it doesn't matter if I go home and talk about a client, Medicare Advantage, what the government's doing, or our son's soccer practice. It all does go. I'm like, it's okay, honey. I bought you a new computer today. Make it work. I can't make my computer work. It breaks all the time. Please fix it. So he keeps me online, fortunately, and our entire staff. Well, ladies, it was so fun talking with you as always. Keep up the good fight. And if anybody out there that's watching this wants to reach out to them, please do. They're amazing individuals. They've built a massive company out there, and pick their brain more. They're willing to share. They're willing to be friends. They're willing to meet for mimosas, I think.
Yes, definitely mimosas.
Thanks, y'all. And thank you all for watching. And we hope to hear from y'all soon.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Have a great day, Rebecca. Thank you so much.